In many ways, there could not have been a state visit that better demonstrated the world's major economic problem at the moment. With the US hosting Australia, with President Donald Trump, of course, hosting Prime Minister Scott Morrison, he was hosting a nation that's caught right in the fulcrum of this trade debate. Like much of the world, Australia relies on the US for security and for strategic stability. And also, like much of the world, we rely on the US for trade, investment and economic order. But we also are heavily dependent, many would say too dependent, on our trade with China. The economic rise of the Middle Kingdom has not only lifted hundreds of millions of Chinese people out of poverty, it's transformed that communist giant, but it's also bolstered and underwritten Australia's prosperity. Make no mistake, for instance, it was Chinese demand that got Australia through the GFC, much more than anything we did ourselves. So the crucial question for us, and the whole world for that matter, goes something like this.
About China, you know that Australia is invested in both sides of this. What concerns you most about China? Is it tariffs or the potential of tanks one day?
Well, I think really what we have is the trade, but everything equalizes if you think about it. You know, we've paid China hundreds of billions of dollars a year, much more than we should have. Other presidents should have done something about this. But I have a very good relationship with President Xi, and we'll see if we can work something out. They've had a very rough year. They've had a very, very bad year, worse than 57 years.
Now, what you heard there from President Trump is something his critics too often ignore, as they like to portray him as a protectionist and anti-free trade. He clearly wants free trade. He's using tariffs as a pressure point in his negotiation. He wants free and fair trade with China, and where its policies on currency valuation, intellectual property rights and import restrictions have been criticised by many countries and presidents over the year, Democrat and Republican, they all want the same outcome in the end. The question is whether Donald Trump's strong and controversial escalation of this debate actually pushes China to make the concessions that most of the world wants.
What's important is what Australia's view is, and I set that out in the Oval Office yesterday, and we've always been very consistent about that. I mean, you need to, I think, understand that Australia's economic relationship with China is different to the United States' economic relationship with China. We have a surplus, they have a deficit, and they have a very different economic experience of their relationship. For Australia, it has been an important source of trade growth and economic growth. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It has been an absolute boon for Australia, and that's why I have always made it clear that we have always welcomed China's economic growth and will continue to. This is why we have a comprehensive strategic partnership with them.
Yeah, the sooner we get a resolution, of course, the better. I'm not suggesting any of this is easy or it doesn't carry great risk. I'm just pointing out that Donald Trump wants the same outcomes that his critics want. And clearly our own Prime Minister seems to comprehend that point and isn't afraid to say so publicly. So if Trump does succeed, of course, surely his critics are going to have to praise him. Don't hold your breath.